Okay, here we go. Focus.
Hello everyone. I've wanted to make this video for almost 2 years now, and every time I come back to think about it, I get more and more ideas and thoughts about this franchise that keep bogging me down and sending me down new tangents that keep me from actually sitting down and writing it. But the consistent thing in all of this is that I kept coming back. In fact, the entire reason I decided to make this video in the first place is because in 2022, I found myself obsessed with cars like I hadn't been since I was 11, collecting the merch again, coming up with story ideas. I hadn't really given these movies or my giant collection of toys from them from my childhood much serious thought for almost 6 years. But when I revisited all 3 films, something pulled me back in. It wasn't just something in 1 or 2 movies, like the first and the third, the ones you're supposed to like according to film critics, or the one I had the most nostalgia for, the one you're supposed to hate, but rather the whole trilogy as a cohesive unit and the merchandise range to boot. Why had Pixar's least popular ongoing movie series captured me once again? What was it about cars that I could still somehow see? As I mulled it over, I discovered a consistent underlying theme that connected the core of each of the aspects of the franchise together. This was what had made me so invested as a kid and had pulled me back in once again. But where to begin to explain this through line? Where to possibly start this odyssey that I had unwittingly created for myself? As a kid, I loved Cars as a franchise. The characters, the films, the toys, the Disneyland, you name it. But in terms of Pixar movies, Cars the movie wasn't actually my favorite. I preferred films like Monsters, Inc. or Toy Story. As I got older and developed an interest in film, I never really discounted Cars like a lot of people did, but I kind of figured that revisiting it would make me like it less. However, when I actually watched the movie again, I realized that there was a lot going on structurally that made it a really tight, compelling narrative. Sure, the plot of big-time hotshot gets changed by a small town has been done before, but Cars somehow did it in a way that feels fresh, that really encourages the idea of how good for you leaving your comfort zone can be. Let me explain what I got out of the trilogy on my adult reviewing and get a little bit at what I think it is trying to say at its core. The main character of Cars is a race car named Lightning McQueen. McQueen was basically born on the track. We see him take the world by the storm in his rookie season with an ambitious hotshot attitude that doesn't really care about anyone or anything other than the glory of winning races. He neglects the advice of his pit crew and fellow racers because he finds their requests inefficient or irrelevant to his goal of winning. However, it's clear that he loves the attention of the press and his fans, and one of the main motivations behind his goal to win is a desire to gain more attention and respect from those around him by becoming partners with a much larger sponsor than his own. Want versus need is a very common strategy in screenwriting to create conflict within a film, and it is set up very well with McQueen's character. What McQueen wants is to win the Piston Cup and thusly the Dinoco sponsorship, but what he doesn't know is what he actually needs is the intention, acknowledgement, and the companionship that he thinks doing so will bring him. However, he pushes away many of the existing people in his life that he could be forming positive relationships with because he sees them as nagging him or hindering his pursuit of this goal. Lightning has a one-track mind here and can't see outside of the 4 left turns he has to make over and over again to achieve this. However, when he gets accidentally abandoned on the highway and ends up in Radiator Springs, he's thrown completely out of his comfort zone. When he meets the town's residents, he devalues them because he doesn't see the meaning behind their quieter lives, seeing them as ambitionless, purposeless, and lifeless. When he finds out about the town doctor being the fabulous Hudson Hornet, only then does he gain respect for Doc, because Doc used to dedicate his life towards racing, something McQueen sees as a real pursuit, admiring the image of the fabulous Hudson Hornet and his perceived stardom as opposed to the reality of Doc's life. It is only after Doc reveals what happened to him that Lightning grows a realization that maybe there is more to life than this ambition to win, which is only further cemented by his drive with Sally and his newly observant interactions with the townsfolk. From learning that the racing world didn't treat Doc like a person, he realizes that the humanity he shares with everyone in the town is more permanent and meaningful than the validation he could receive from winning the race. And for the purposes of this video, I'm going to keep calling it humanity because there's no better word to describe the shared collective conscious I am trying to get at, and I'm not going to call it carmanity as funny and exhausting as that would be. Lightning would have never had this realization if he had skipped the town entirely like he had planned to. In Radiator Springs, there is no way for him to focus on a track that isn't there, and this experience forces him to look at the world outside of his bubble. In doing so, he finds a companionship deeper and more fulfilling than what he had originally wanted. While Radiator Springs is absolutely not what he was going for, after opening up to it, it gave him what he truly needed. In other words,
if you're going hard enough left, you'll find yourself turning right.
This isn't just a piece of advice that Doc gives McQueen about racing on dirt, it's the entire thesis of the film, and moreover, the entire trilogy. McQueen figuratively and literally turned right into Radiator Springs, despite wanting to head left to California, and instead ended up gaining the connection he had unconsciously hoped to win there the whole time. While he may have thought he wanted to win by making those left turns on the racetrack and gaining popularity, he achieved his first real friends by turning the complete opposite direction of what his previous lifestyle had been. It is the trust and openness required to successfully turn right to go left that McQueen doesn't have when Doc first gives him this advice. However, by opening himself up to the outside world around him and considering new perspectives and lifestyles, he's able to develop this trust in the unknown and successfully come out a changed and fulfilled person. This is a fantastic theme for a film because not only does it encourage us to stop and consider the beauty of the world and the people around us that we overlook, it presents this message through a flawed protagonist. Instead of being preachy, the film lets us see how Lightning's dismissive mindset keeps him from his own happiness, while his becoming open to new perspectives helps kickstart a positive new life for him. This is a very progressive and important idea that we need to remind ourselves of constantly as we go through life. The second and third movies also share this same central theme. Even once McQueen has grown to see the beauty in the world around him, it usually takes him a little bit longer to open up to other perspectives when he gets caught up again in his ambition. In Cars 2 and 3, it is established that McQueen's primary joy is now found in his friendships, from his newfound family to the friends he races with on the track. His relationships with Bobby and Cal in the opening to the third movie define how he now views racing. Not as a competition, but as a way to have fun with his friends in the sport. This is also why he is so annoyed by Francesco in Cars 2. Francesco's derogatory jokes about McQueen and his friends are taken more seriously by McQueen than Francesco intends them to, and McQueen becomes more defensive at someone who he sees as much more competitive and combative than he is. Ironically, his newfound annoyance as those more competitive in nature brings out his old competitive side, his desire to win now a sign of revenge more than personal gratification. This side gets brought out big time when Jackson Storm enters the circuit. Storm interrupts the good-spirited camaraderie of the Piston Cup that McQueen treasures so much and makes it about competition again. McQueen would probably be fine with this if it didn't end up literally forcing his friends into retirement, taking away what is really the most important thing in racing to him now. He becomes determined to beat Storm, not just to survive or to win, but because Storm goes against everything McQueen has grown to stand for. His want to win is so strong that it causes him to crash, but despite his time to reevaluate afterward, he persists down the same track to beat Storm out of that desire to somehow prove that racing is more than just cold stats and competition. He doesn't want the racing world to erase the humanity he saw in it by shutting him down without empathy, just as they shut Doc down without empathy. But in the process of trying to convince them not to shut him down, he gets caught up in stats and technical terms himself, becoming annoyed with his new trainer Cruz. Like with his old pit crew, and with Mater in Cars 2, he pushes her away due to viewing her as a hindrance to his goal of winning. He leans into pursuing the technical and literal aspects of Doc's training and past, like traveling to all the places Doc raced in search of sacred dirt, instead of remembering who Doc really was beyond the racing paraphernalia. Ironically, McQueen's ambition is to preserve a world that has already stopped existing, and in the process he has become the mindless competitive spirit that he is trying to defeat. But upon visiting Smokey, Doc's old crew chief, and becoming immersed in the day-to-day life that Doc used to live, Smokey reminds him that it was not the racing that was the best time of Doc's life, but his mentoring of and relationship with Lightning McQueen. He helps McQueen realize what he had discovered all those years ago, that the love and friendship and connections he's made have been the joy and the meaning in both his and Doc's life. Through this, he becomes closer to Cruz, appreciating her for her friendship and who she is instead of just as a roadblock. When McQueen falters during the Florida 500, it has become clear to him that what he was fighting for is already gone. There is no getting back all of his old friends and relationships in the Piston Cup in the same context that they used to be in. He's not giving up anything because in reality, he's realizing that it's already gone. The friendships themselves, the joy, the memory, the connections will never go away. He just can't find that here anymore. But he can find it in Cruz. While he has been fighting for the right thing, he has been fighting in the wrong way, in a context that is simply not productive or healthy anymore. When he says racing is the reward, not the stuff, he means the friendliness of the support, the sportsmanship, the freedom, the friends. He cannot feel this way in the Piston Cup anymore by racing himself, but he wants Cruz to be able to. He finds his true joy again in his friendship with Cruz, turning right and completely ditching the race in order to go left and recapture the meaningful connection he had with others in the sport through the process of coaching someone new. I also want to point out here that once Cruz wins the race and actually steps into the sport, we see the next gens that were previously pretty blank and impossible for McQueen to connect to become friendly with Cruz, and each congratulate her afterwards, even engaging in some of the same jokes that McQueen did with his friends, showing that while McQueen's relationships have ended, the Piston Cup itself still has humanity within the next generation that he just wasn't able to see, that now Cruz can experience for herself. So what we have is a series of narratives wherein Lightning McQueen overlooks the real beauty of his life in pursuit of an often hollow goal. But what does the series say is the real beauty of life, and why? So I love the racing aspect of Cars and how for McQueen it goes from being a competition to a friendly game back to a competition and eventually into a new beginning for him. But I didn't really talk about Cars too much in that segment, and while you could assume it's because there's less material for me to pull from in regards to the thesis statement turn right to go left, you'd be wrong. It's still completely in line with that thesis beyond just the racing elements. However, I wanted to talk about it here separately in order to segue into a broader point about why I like Cars and keep coming back to it. So the elephant in the room is that Lightning McQueen is not the main character of Cars 2. The character that had all of these important revelations about the meaning of life and stopping to smell the roses is not one of the main two focus characters of the sequel. Why is that? Is there something that the makers of the film wanted to get across by having the bumbling sidekick be the main character? Other than merchandise and laughs, obviously. Well, I'd argue that Mater specifically not making sense as the main character is a purposeful choice to play into the assumptions that both the characters and we, the viewer, are likely to make about him. In the first Cars, he is set up as a sort of redneck neighbor that McQueen neither considers a threat nor a friend, but over the course of the film, he is surprised by Mater's earnest and genuine nature, and begins to form a real friendship with him. In a way, Mater is the embodiment of Radiator Springs in its extremes to McQueen, something that is new, completely unlike Lightning's sensibilities, loud and in his face, yet underneath, charming and kind. As they grow closer, Mater, as McQueen's self-appointed best friend, becomes the physical symbol of McQueen's newfound openness and the importance of taking the time to notice the little things and the good in them. He is one of the largest turning points for McQueen to begin to realize the humanity of the town around him, and to begin to appreciate the things that he used to take for granted, while always pushing him to try new things altogether. In the intro to Cars 2, Mater is set up as just as unassuming as he was in the first movie, only now to us, the audience, instead of to McQueen. We open with what appears to be a complex and sophisticated spy thriller with Cars, then cut immediately to Mater, and our first question is, why? What do these two things have to do with each other? How are these two characters ever going to cross paths, much less meaningfully so? In this way, we overlook Mater the same way that the characters do because his place in this movie is just as baffling as the plot surrounding him. Not only is it McQueen's ambition that overlooks Mater again, but the fast track of the spy world, who cannot slow down to listen to Mater or appreciate his genuinity. They don't care about the little details or the signs of the world that show humanity that Mater does, assuming that his optimism and humor is merely a persona. Mater is captivated by everything, from thinking that the lemons fighting in Tokyo is a karate demonstration to losing his mind at the parts market and all the vendors in Paris. In fact, it is Mater's awareness of these smaller details, both car parts and car relationships, that are what solve the case for the spy agents, when otherwise they were too blinded by their own protocol to see. The tangents that might make Mater seem crazy to an outsider are exactly what he needs to expose the mastermind when no one else could have. Again, Mater's observations triumph over the fast ambition of the spy agents, and they grow to confess to Mater that they really do appreciate him for just who he is after overlooking him for so long. In Cars 2, it is not the protagonist who is overlooking life and their priorities and has to realize it, but the secondary characters through their overlooking of the main character, someone who never overlooks even the littlest thing life has to offer. In this way, it acts as an extremely clever inverse of the first film, where instead of following a small town with a flashy race car dropped into the middle of it, we follow a flashy global stage with a normal small town guy thrown back in. But again, I hear you ask, why Mater? Why is Mater the symbol of humanity in this series? Why continue to make us endure this seemingly stupid, annoying character for the sake of getting this same point across? Because Mater is imperfect. And that's the point. He is filthy and at times annoying because he represents all sides of what it means to be alive, including the values that we traditionally shun or tend to not see the value in. Mater is the part of ourselves that we tried to hide away from the public, the one weird guy in our family we don't want to be seen with. We are all imperfect. Certainly McQueen is. But it is only in recognizing our own imperfection, like Mater consistently does, that we are able to understand the beauty and importance in this imperfection. Mater proudly wears it as a badge of his life and individuality, refusing to buff up his dents when offered because of the fact that each new scar, often considered an imperfection by many, tells a story about his life and invokes a positive memory that he wants to remember. McQueen remarks at the beginning of the first movie about how he hates being associated with his sponsor Rust-eze due to how he feels it damages his image by showing him surrounded by rusty old cars, the target audience for their product. This scene is brilliant because it shows just how far McQueen, and really a lot of people, will go to avoid imperfection or being seen as lesser because of it. What makes this scene so impactful is that Mater, the rustiest car in Radiator Springs, will become McQueen's best friend despite all of this. It takes McQueen 2 movies to actually fully respect Mater, but this shift in and of itself is huge. If everyone was perfect, then they would all look like the generic lifeless stock cars that McQueen and his friends are replaced by in the third movie. Instead, Cars posits that the beauty in life is imperfection and individuality. The rusty old cars in the tent a wide variety of body shapes and types, and the town of Radiator Springs a melting pot, home to cars of diverse histories, makes, models, and ethnic backgrounds. This is the world in a nutshell. Not just one perfect type of person in a sea of the same, but an ever-evolving microcosm of every possible size, shape, and life that a person could be or have. This is why the ensemble cast of the entire Cars franchise is so important. Just like Mater, we are meant to notice the little pieces of character sprinkled throughout the large, diverse world, appreciating the endearing nature of these snapshots into lives of this complicated universe. The only reason he is able to catch on to the spy plot is not just because of his attention to detail, but because he fundamentally understands where the culprits are coming from in their motivations. The masterminds behind it all are lemons, cars that the world sees as broken and imperfect, and have essentially fully ignored and stopped providing healthcare for. In retrospect, the biggest issue with Cars 2 is how f***ed up it is that the lemons are portrayed as the villains in a situation where we honestly are meant to feel a lot of sympathy for them. They're only acting out because society has not made room for them. These outcasts share every attribute that Mater does, and while we are shown several good lemons in the film, it is hard to watch when realizing how actually justified their actions are. Finn and Holly would have never cracked the case because they aren't even considering the social conditions that these cars have to go through every day due to their imperfections. Mater only gets it because he has also experienced this discrimination, and the others just brush this off simply because they've never even thought about it that deeply. In reality, the Hugo family isn't that different from Queen's Radiator Springs found family. I mean, besides the various war crimes that Chop Shop Alex has committed in order to be wanted in
France and Germany and the
stop
Czech
it!
Republic.
Okay. Keep your voice down. You're gonna make me arrested.
In Cars 3, I think it's really important to bring to attention the fact that the reason Cruz was dissuaded from her dream of being a racer was because she didn't fit in. She rolled into a male-dominated field of racers that are basically all built for something that she was quite literally not built for. That doesn't mean that she can't race with the best of them, but that she would look so out of place that the pressure of being such an outcast weighed down on her too much for her to continue pursuing it. Like Finn and Holly's unawareness of the unfairness that the Lemons had to face, McQueen never felt the othering that Cruz did, so he doesn't fully process the weight of this at first. This is why Cruz's first win, being at the Thunder Hollow Demolition Derby, is so thematically important. Okay, so McQueen did not realize at all what he was getting into with Thunder Hollow. He thought it was going to be some traditional-ass race with some traditional-ass cars because he is a traditional-ass dude trying to chase down some secret hidden dirt voodoo that his perfect grandpa supposedly tapped into. These cars are totally out of the ordinary, and each of them is their own brand of endearing insanity. I didn't even like this scene when I first saw the movie because I thought it felt too cartoony, too over the top and away from the simple heart of the previous movies. But I keep rewatching it, and holy I love it more every time. There is no shortage of insanely funny and unique character moments with these extras who barely get any screen time yet are totally and completely memorable and identifiable. Dr. Damage is a ambulance that makes his own siren sounds. Superfly wants to fly. T-Bone can't catch a goddamn break, and Fair Game is literally just a New York taxi that came all the way down to Florida just to do this shit. These people have their own culture and even talk to each other casually during what to McQueen and Cruz seems like an all-out bloodbath. They beat the out of each other on the track and then go and have drinks in the bar afterward like good friends. These people are f***ing insane, and it's awesome. None of these have the same mold at all. All of them are different shapes, colors, sizes, and are completely and totally imperfect. While McQueen and Cruz are under insane pressure from this event that they had no real clue about, all of the standards and societal pressure that stopped Cruz from racing before is gone now. It's all out the window because anyone can race in this. There are more female racers in the Demolition Derby than in any of the other Cars racing series lineups combined. In fact, it's basically a 50-50 gender split across the board here. It's so fitting and beautiful that Cruz's first win is here because even though these people are a bit frightening, they're outcasts, just like her, that have made a community that supports each other. They cheer Cruz on in the final race from the bar as her equals, colleagues even, with respect for her. I cannot stress enough how beautiful this is to me and how emblematic of the franchise as a whole it is. Basically, Cars is about people. It's about individuality and uniqueness and the people who fall outside of society's perfect nuclear ideal and make their own communities instead. It's about found family. It's about how each of the World Grand Prix racers are built differently, with different looking crew chiefs each representing the culture and style of racing practiced in their home country. It's about how you have value, even if you're considered too old or too imperfect, or if you don't look or act like the people around you. Essentially what I'm saying is this is the same as this, and this, and this, and this, and even this. They're all the same in that they're all uniquely individual, imperfect, ostracized, and beautiful. This is what Cars is about. The beauty of rusty old cars, in a metaphorical sense. You can't tell me this franchise isn't about outcasts when there is literally a montage of every major female character across generations watching Cruz beat Jackson Storm with bated breath because they know how big a deal this is. There's a reason why, as a kid, my favorite diecasts to collect were always the Lemons or the more weathered cars. I just didn't realize it. And why my favorite character was Fred. Yes. Fred.
He knows my name! He knows my name!
So, the ideas of names itself is really interesting to me in the context of Cars, because in a typical film, we usually know the names of the main characters, and anyone who isn't really relevant to the story just gets credited as the job they were seen doing, or their general physical attributes. If we just see them for a scene or in the background, it doesn't matter what their name is, because at that point, the main character doesn't know their name either. It's the same in real life. We know the names of the people that we're close to, those who are relevant to us, while the world is full of background characters or cameos that we will never know the name of. However, the difference between film and reality is that in our reality, those characters, or, people, actually do have names. We just never learn them. Everyone we see has a name and a backstory that we simply aren't aware of and oftentimes don't really need to know, but it's there. That person is the main character of their own story and have just as unique a perspective as we do. The same couldn't be said for most films with a lot of background characters except for one. Cars. Cars is a wholly unique franchise because not only did they make names and a lot of bios for almost every single background character, even ones that only appeared for a shot, they made toys of them as well. I can get a toy of Lightning McQueen, sure, but I can also get a toy of that random taxi we see the back of in the wheel well scene in Cars 2. And here he is, with a face that we never saw in the film and a name. Each of these cars has a name. Very, very few are just referred to by what they are, like Trunk Fresh Pity or No Stall Hauler. I don't know if I can fully get across not only how unique this makes Cars as a franchise, but just how important and impactful this is for me. I love my friends, and I love people watching, and in both cases, I'm utterly fascinated by studying them. I could watch and listen to them for hours and continue to just discover more about them and what kind of lives they're leading and what their perspective is on the world. I'll never truly get a complete picture of them since I'm not, them, but they're endearing and moving to me. The fact that so many people exist outside of our own perception, each with their own wonderful imperfections, is honestly something that gives me a lot of hope. And seeing that reflected through the level of detail and specificity that they give every model of every background character in the Cars universe is something that really inspires me. I've often remarked about how if I could, I'd want to collect people, because every one of their stories are so interesting to me and, in my opinion, worthy of preservation. We have a limited time on this planet, so in the end, what people remember of us is all that's left. While not everyone wants to be seen, everyone in some way wants to be acknowledged and validated and feel like they left something behind when they die. And names are a huge part of that. A name separates an individual from a group, and acknowledging a name by saying it and remembering it is an acknowledgement of the person. By saying someone's name, you make them feel seen. To me, that's what the Cars franchise has done to all of these characters that we only often get to spend mere seconds with by naming them and immortalizing them in die-cast format. Though they are all fictional, collecting them feels like the closest I'm going to get to actually collecting people, especially the ones that they wrote a backstory for in the Car Finder Blu-ray game or the Meet the Cars books. Like, this is insane! This car here is actually the love of Red's life and the reason he loves flowers! What the hell, Pixar? I'm going to cry! Like immortalizing a person, the diecast line immortalizes specific moments in characters' lives with the endless variants of McQueen in action in an important time in his life, or the many colors of Ramon, who changes his look the same way you might change your hair color based on your state of mind at a certain point in your life. And on another further level, many of the background characters are often named after actual Pixar employees that worked on the movies and shorts. In this way, through collecting them, we extend the legacy of real people that we almost never see acknowledged publicly for their work, with a few truly unfortunate exceptions. Cars doesn't just preach about rusty old cars and the importance of diversity and the beauty of humanity, it sells it right back to us through the toy line. Insane! The company making endless commercial merch off of property actually somehow found a way to tie it into the main message of the films and not come off as blatantly hypocritical or dismissive of the movie's promotion of simplicity. It's amazing to me that somehow this all ties together in one franchise. Like, the fact that Mattel making me want to, like, go to the store and give them money for some random guy named Colin Borev is actually making me more likely to wish the store employee, who is also named Colin, but I don't know that, a nice night, is kind of crazy. Like, yeah, there are people that are going to ignore all of this and just want to collect, who don't even care about the names or even where they appeared. You know, that's me too, to an extent, but also, on a deeper level, I can't detach myself from it because it's a character with a face that I can see in the background of some frame somewhere, proving to me that this dude had a life in this fictional universe. I can't go and get a Hot Wheel and get the same experience. We can fight and argue about how dumb and illogical the Cars universe is for ages, but the fact of the matter is that I would not care about these cars if they were not also talking and alive and living like humans. If I'm a kid, I'm going to create a story with these characters. I'm going to create narratives and even invent new lives for some of these. This world begs to be explored because of its expansiveness. I can't do this by getting a 98-cent Ford F-150. That does nothing for me. Cars is most likely a franchise that could not have survived as long as it has had it not been for the massive success of its toy line. And personally, I can think of next to no other property that matches it in terms of what it has the potential to spark in kids' imaginations. I know I'm really up Cars' ass right now, but I feel like I've never really understood why I like ensemble casts in media so much and why I feel this need to tell as many people's stories as I can through my art until I rediscovered Cars. Cars encourages you to stop and consider the people around you. Though they all have names and are living their own valuable lives, if you look at them, they just look like a sea of extras, like a stadium full of fans. But like McQueen, if you stop taking them for granted and realize how much life and loss they have all experienced, and how big a part of their lives, their hobbies, and seemingly mundane routines actually are, you see something really beautiful. Something that after you notice it, you can't unsee. And if, like McQueen, you engage with them when you can, you indulge their passions and interests, you may suddenly see how much change simply being seen can bring to someone. While McQueen himself was dramatically changed by the town of Radiator Springs, he reinvigorated the people within it to see life with a renewed passion by listening to them and acknowledging them, so much so that they fixed their neon. Radiator Springs turned the lights on in McQueen's head, but he turned their lights back on too. So, that was a lot, and I really just kind of wanted to try to fit everything in there that I could, because I realized, well, I don't really make video essays that often, and, you know, if I'm gonna get the chance to actually really talk about Cars, I kind of want to put everything in there. So apologies if some parts were disjointed, but I'm still just amazed at how well it really does all fit together. Thanks again for watching this video, and special thanks goes out to the people at Pixar who made Cars, including Jay Ward, who continues to champion the series as it moves onward and pushes for it to keep going forward. Thanks as well to Martin Ariola, who was selected to expand the Cars line after it became successful as diecast in 2006 and eventually ended up creating most of the wonderful world that we know now in the toy line. Thanks to you, man, we would not have the world of Cars that we do now. And of course, the late and great Joe Ramp, whose spirit is felt throughout the Cars movie and the franchise, and we would not be here without. And a random extra shout out to Brad Paisley, who somehow got whatever the they were cooking with Cars and wrote like a bunch of random songs for it, and also Planes, Fire and Rescue for some reason. But that guy, he knew like what was up. Like, his only song in Cars 3 is during the Demolition Derby scene, and like, he gets it. Like, that guy gets it. And of course, a special thanks to my girlfriend, who Without, I would not have even revisited the Cars franchise. She has encouraged me to follow my passions and start collecting again, and if it weren't for her buying me a fabulous Lightning McQueen toy that I wanted but told myself I wouldn't get, we would not be in this mess. So thank you, Annie. And with that, good night, everybody.